right. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Parenting Teen Show podcast, where we help parents of teenager navigate through raising their particular teenagers. So today I have a special guest, and I want to take time to give this guest her due props, if you will. And she has a company or organization called Revitalizing Life, Inc. I have correction, Revolutionizing Life, Inc. And the name of her podcast is Powerful Parenting for Today's Kids. Now, she has a specialty, and her specialty not only is a master's degree in counseling psychology, but as a certified parenting coach. Everybody, welcome Erin to the podcast. Thank you, Erin, for being here. How are you today?
I am terrific. I'm so happy to be here with you and your audience.
Well, we appreciate you being here and giving us a wealth of nuggets on how to navigate through these channels of raising these teenagers as difficult they are. And so we want to kind of talk about, Erin, today, how you parent and how you help parents to navigate. So you do so through parent, teen, and family coaching. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you also have a podcast in which you help navigate through those particular channels as well, the Powerful Parenting for Today's Kids podcast. Now, how often does your podcast air?
Right now, twice a week.
Okay, twice a week, okay. And can they find you on any podcast platform?
I don't think there's one I'm not on. So I'm on all the major ones, all the smaller ones. Anywhere they listen to podcasts, they can find me.
Okay. All right. Well, parents, there you go. So after she provides a wealth of knowledge for us today, you can go and find her on all podcast networks. Now, you also are an author. You have a book that you also help parents to navigate all of these particular situations. Tell us about your book and the title.
Well, I have a book called Connection and Kindness, The Key to Changing the World Through Parenting. And I wrote that. That book basically came out of a year plus of trying to take conscious parenting principles that I was learning from my dear friend, Dr. Shafali, and apply them into my life with my kids. And so I would try the different things she would teach, and I would write about it and kind of work it out in my mind. And then that book was a compilation of those efforts that I took over that time.
Okay. All right. And so where can people find your books?
On Amazon and barnesandnoble.com.
All right. So when we talk about, Erin, the ease of parents getting triggered by their teenager, what is the likelihood that parents can really overcome these triggers, and what do you recommend to overcome the triggers?
I think there is a great likelihood, a great possibility that parents can learn how to overcome their triggers.
Mm-hmm.
When we are triggered as parents, we kind of get tunnel vision. We kind of get focused on whatever our child did that triggered us. And then it disconnects us from the creative channel that we have to try and to be able to more creatively navigate that situation and figure out the way forward that's not just battling every step of the way with our child.
Okay.
And so when you can kind of neutralize those triggers and overcome them or move forward without them hampering you, it makes it so much easier to figure out how to get through that situation with your child.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's kind of look at this, Erin. Let's look at the fact that maybe some parents do not know what trigger is. So why don't we take it there? What exactly is a trigger? And how can a teen, if we can give us an example, how can a teen trigger a parent?
Oh, that's a great question, and I can think of a million different answers to that.
Okay.
But our teenagers can trigger us in all sorts of ways, right? They can talk back to us and be disrespectful. boom, we could be triggered and angry and how dare you talk to me like that. They might break their curfew and show up whenever. They might get suspended from school. We might find out that they experimented with drugs and alcohol. They might, there's a million different things that teenagers try to do, and or different ways they behave or act towards us, particularly that can set us off and make us so triggered and angry.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we turn into the Incredible Hulk in 1 second.
Mm. But but isn't there an additional or different type of responses in you working with parents that they may have other than anger?
A different type of what?
A different type of trigger response.
Oh, yes. Yes. So when we're angry and triggered, it doesn't go well for anyone. That's going to cause us to, our instinct will be to yell, to scream, to punish, to threaten, slam the door, walk away, send them to their room. All these things that are not going to get to the heart of the matter and solve anything and help us to move forward productively as a team. I think of parents and teenagers, well, parents and children, but particularly teenagers, as a team working together. And the common goal that we should share is our teens' growing independence, working towards becoming an independent adult. So if we're constantly battling over that natural progression that kids should be going through, that cause them to do different things or behave in different ways, then we're hampering our ability to work together towards this common goal. So I have this iceberg that I share with parents that I know that they will be able to download the link from you so that they can see it for themselves. But for our purposes today during our discussion, I'll kind of just describe it for you. So an iceberg, if you imagine like a cross section of an iceberg, there's the water level, and then above the water there's a tiny little piece of the iceberg. But then in the dark water below, there's this huge section of what you don't see. You only see that little chunk of ice at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And that little chunk of ice is your teenager's behavior. So the lying, the disrespect, talking back, experimenting with substances, breaking curfew, failing a class, all those things, all those behaviors are just the tip of the iceberg. And it's what you can see, but the bigger piece is underneath where you can't see. And that is what's causing the behavior that you see. So it could be needing more independence. It could be lacking in self-confidence or self-worth. It could be feeling betrayed, feeling incapable. It could be a desire to fit in. That's a huge one for kids. They'll do all sorts of things to fit in with their peers that might not be good decisions. And so if we as parents, it's very natural for us as parents to get stuck on the tip of the iceberg. We focus on that behavior, and it's because we've kind of been socialized over generations that we should be controlling that behavior, that the goal of parenting is to just get our kids to behave right or well. And just when they don't behave right, we just control it. We punish it, we stomp it out, we threaten it, discipline it, whatever we do.
So how does the iceberg help the parents?
Well, I try to help parents to see that behavior is not the thing to focus on. Behavior is actually a messenger, almost like a carrier pigeon that shows up to bring you a message.
Mm-hmm.
And the message is your child has an unmet need that they need help with. It's invisible. It's that thing under the surface. So the behavior is showing up to say, hey, help me. I need help here. I'm struggling. Mm-hmm. And so if the parents can see it that way, just that shift is helpful in beginning to neutralize the trigger. Because then let's say let's say our teenager comes home from school and we say, hey, honey, how was your day? Fine. I don't want to talk about it. And they stomp up, leave me alone. And they stomp up the stairs and slam the door to their bedroom. Well, that's the behavior at the surface. And if we see behavior as something to control and get them to behave better, then we'll be focused on that. So we could instantly be triggered. How dare they speak to me like that? I simply asked a question trying to be nice and they're going to be rude to me? I don't think so. Then in our triggered state, we stomp up the stairs, fling open their door, and yell at them because they spoke to us like that, or we threaten them, or we punish them. You're so rude and disrespectful. You're not going out with your friends tonight. Well, now all we've got is a wicked, nasty battle between us, and it could result in an argument or who knows what. But what's ultimately going to come out of it is disconnection between us and them. So the next time it might achieve our supposed goal of stopping that behavior, which should not be the ultimate goal, but it might achieve that goal, meaning the next time they come home, if they're upset, rather than talking to us, they'll just bite their lip and go away because they don't want to get in trouble for behaving like that. So it might sort of accomplish that ineffective goal, but a better thing would be if our teenager comes home and we say, hey, honey, how was your day? I don't want to talk about it. Leave me alone. They stomp up the stairs. Well, if we instantly think of that iceberg, and I have the iceberg hanging in my kitchen so that at a moment's notice, if I get a little bit off track, I can just glance at it and it snaps me right back to thinking about behavior as a messenger. And so I encourage parents to hang this iceberg that they can download anywhere where they spend a lot of time interacting with their kids so that it's there as a visual reminder.
Now you state that there is a goal that they should focus on. Can you kind of clarify that? What goal should they focus on when their child has behaviors that are triggering them? And then the second question is, this is what I teach as I'm coaching parents of teenagers, the ability to have emotional control. Because without that, these things that you are stating may not be possible because it's more so of a mindset. So first, kind of clarify what goals should they have. Shouldn't have the goal of controlling the teenager's behavior at that moment. So what goals should they have?
The goal that I encourage is to figure out what the unmet need is that the behavior is trying to tell them about, to alert them to.
The message
of what is trying to figure out what do they need help with. They are struggling with something. What is it and how can we help them? So if we go back to the example of the teenager speaking rudely to us when they get home from school, if we use this iceberg, the way it can help to neutralize our own trigger, when they shout at us and stomp up the stairs and slam their door, in one way we could be triggered and angry and then stomp up and yell back at them and then we cause a battle. But if we see the iceberg out of the corner of our eye hanging on the wall or something, then we can more easily switch from, oh, how dare they speak to me like that, from being triggered. Then we put our detective hat on and we say, wait a minute. Why in the world did they snap at me when I just said, how was your day? I wonder what's happening. I wonder what's got them in such a foul mood. So when we start getting curious and wondering why that behavior is there, it kind of just takes us away from the trigger because now we're not stuck on, oh my gosh, how dare they behave like that to me. Now we're into, I wonder what's going on for them. So if the iceberg can help us shift out of how dare they, resisting the behavior into curiosity and wondering, what's the message here? How can I help them? Then maybe we can go up the stairs not stomping, but maybe we can walk up the stairs, lightly tap on their door and open it and say, hey, wow, when you got home, I asked you how your day was and you shouted at me and then slammed your door. Sounds like you must have had a rough day. Do you want to talk about it? Is there anything I could do to help you? Now, they might tell you right then and there what happened, or they might not. They might say, I don't want to talk about it, or they might cry, or they might, whatever. But you've made that connection. You're saying, I see you. I hear you. I don't necessarily understand, but I want to, and I'm here to help you. And
do you find some parents having difficulties communicating through vulnerability? Like just the example you provide, do you find parents have difficulty with just saying those things? And then
yes.
how do you help them in another strategy or using an iceberg to be able to be vulnerable like that?
Well, I encourage parents to also take a pause, take a deep breath. That's taking space between the stimulus, which is their behavior, and our response, which is whatever we're going to do about it. If we can separate those two out and put a little space in between, they yell at us, instead of immediately yelling back, we take a breath, give ourselves a little bit of space, even if it's just one breath before we do something or say something. That little space gives us a chance to remember the iceberg, to remember what is our bigger purpose here, what is our bigger goal. When you're triggered, your focus is so narrow is narrowed so much that you might think that the big goal is to just battle over this thing that they just did. But really, if you can expand your vision and see that the goal really is it's hard to see in the moment, but our goal as parents is to raise an independent adult who can function well in the world. I mean, very basically, that's what it is. So if we can kind of keep remembering that goal. Now, in this little situation, they came home from school and they shouted at us. Well, we have to figure out how we can move forward through that situation and how we can help them with whatever it is that they need. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense to me because, I help parents to navigate. Yeah. How do we break this down in terms of, hey, for a parent who has difficulty controlling their emotions,
yeah,
parent who has life beating them down, financial troubles, trying to work as much as they can. And we have this pandemic situation. How do we not take the world's trouble and bring it into our house and give our feelings of what's not going right to our teenagers? That's what we're finding parents doing. Yeah. Giving, I don't want to use technical terms, but I'm just going to say giving their emotions to people who don't deserve them. Even that person, that teenager, has their own problems. Yeah. So when you're adding these two problems together, then we have got to find
explosive.
Yeah, right. So then the question that I have for you is, how can they actually use the iceberg, not only use it in terms of what you shared with us, but how do they remember to use it? Yeah, it's on their refrigerator. Yeah, it's in their phone somewhere. But how do we teach them how to put these things into practice? Because it's these things that help them along the journey to become something different, a parent that they would have wanted. That's one of the biggest questions that I ask you. Are you being the parent that you would have wanted?
Beautiful question. I love that so much. I think that's a great question. It's fabulous because it really helps to kind of snap them. I can imagine it really helps to snap a parent out of the current struggle that they're having and say, wait a second, am I showing up the way I would want my parent to show up? Whether my parent did show up that way or not, we either want to recreate how our parents treated us, or we want to learn how they taught us how we don't want to behave.
Right.
And so that is a really good question. And I think there are a few things that are important to do when you're trying to transform and change your parenting. It's not easy at first. It takes a lot of effort,
Mm-hmm.
a whole lot of effort, and
Yeah.
it takes a lot of practice. I
Mm-hmm.
almost think of it like building a muscle at the gym. You know, we might decide New Year's Day comes, right? This is a common time for people. And we might say, I want to get in shape. That's my New Year's resolution. Well, that's wonderful, but okay, so you're going to go to the gym on January 1st. That doesn't mean you're going to suddenly have muscles on January 2nd, right? You have to go every day or every other day or 5 days a week or whatever. You have to practice regularly, showing up, lifting those weights, doing the work, and then slowly you'll see results coming out of your efforts. And it's the same thing with parenting. At first, you setting the intention and having the desire to improve your relationship with your child is first. That's step number one. But then just because you set that intention doesn't mean that just miraculously everything's going to be better. It just means that you've now committed. You've set the intention. Now you have to commit to showing up and doing the work. And the iceberg is one tool that you can use to help remind you to do the work. And if you mess up, if your kid comes home and you ask them how they were and they shout at you and you get triggered and you forget and you stomp up the stairs and you yell at them and then you get in a battle, but then later that day you're thinking about it and you're calmer now, or you just feel bad about it, you feel yuck.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can always, and then you remember the iceberg and you go, oh gosh, I forgot it. That's very common early on.
Right.
And it's totally okay to go back to your child at that point and say, you know what, when you came home today, you seemed really upset, and that upset me. That made me angry because of the way you spoke to me, and then I shouted at you, and then we got in an argument. And I'm sorry. I did not want things to go that way. And, as I think back on it, clearly you were upset about something. And if there's anything I can do, I would like to help you. I'm here to help you if you want to talk or anything. And you can have that do-over.
Mm-hmm.
And when you model that kind of behavior, that's a beautiful gift you're giving your child too, because none of us are ever going to be perfect. None of us are ever going to get it right every time. But when we do realize that we messed up and we can go back and try and fix what we did, then we're teaching our kids, hey, when you mess up, you also can try to fix what you did. And that's what you need to do as a human.
Right. Give yourself wiggle room to be a human. That's what I call it. Give yourself wiggle room. Learn to be vulnerable, because the only way a parent is going to go back to their teenager is learning how to be vulnerable and not have pride. Because that mentality of authoritarian in everything concerning what you were saying, being taught, their limiting beliefs or the things they were taught as a child comes back and it shows up in their parenting. Mm-hmm. So with that being stated, understanding that if you can let go of the pride, if you can put that to the side, and if you can be apologetic when you're wrong, then it does reinforce the ability for the home to have a safe environment so the teenager can come and speak with them about issues, rather than learning afterwards and being reactive, which there was times in raising my niece that occurred. But it was until I realized, put all those pieces together, that then we began to have a good, transparent relationship. So transparency is the key, and that's one of the factors here. So using the iceberg is a tool to reinforce managing the mood, and then you're able to add to that. You're able to figure out what works for me, what doesn't work, because the same teenager, parent down the road may not have the same situations. So learning to be resilient within your parenting is the key here. And with that being said, a parent, this is what I tell all parents, you are as healthy as you are as an individual. Your parenting is measured on how healthy you are. Now, we're not talking about,
I love it.
Yeah, we're not talking about your arm broke. That's relevant, but we're talking about your spirit broke. We're talking about your pocketbook broke. We're talking about not feeling like you're on purpose. We're talking about your heart being broke. Now, I can go on and on and on. But the fact of the matter is, when we get it together here, it comes out here, equals health. Healthy relationship with a teenager.
Yes. And what I will say that I have noticed through this pandemic is that the people that I know, whether it's colleagues, friends, family, my clients, and tell me if you've noticed the same thing, the people who had already been doing this work to make themselves healthier, like their spirit healthier, like you talked about, and have already begun working on their relationship with their kids, their relationship with themselves, with the world, with their money, their spouse, if they have one, all of that stuff. The people who had already started doing the work are they're weathering this storm much more successfully, resiliently. They're just more solid. And the people who unfortunately haven't yet realized or learned or been exposed to this opportunity to strengthen themselves and become healthier, they are floundering and they're stressed and they're miserable. And I'm talking about all the stuff, job loss, unemployment, health, fear of the virus, maybe having the virus, all the stuff that's coming, the remote schooling and the disconnection from physical touch with our loved ones, all the stuff that's going on, not to mention all the unrest that's in our world and in our country, the political, like all of it. It's so much that's coming at us right now. And even if you haven't started doing this kind of work for yourself as an individual and yourself as a parent, there's no better time than right now to start. Because like you said, the healthier and the more stable and solid you can feel in your own life, no matter what it is, the better it's going to be. And the better equipped you will be to weather the storms that will inevitably come at you.
Yeah, and I think that's a great stopping point, Erin. I appreciate you for being here with us and sharing your insight on how parenting can flow utilizing the iceberg. And so where can people find you if they're looking to learn more about you?
Well, they can start on my website, and that's just Erin, ERIN Taylor, TAYLOR.com. And then they can connect to my podcast, my blog, my book, all of the stuff, my different courses that I have, all right there on my website.
Okay. All right. So guys, go ahead and check out Erin Taylor's website, as well as all of the other great things that she's doing, so that you can continue to learn to develop. This is about personal development for parents raising teenagers. And so catch us at our next podcast, where we'll be talking about more tools, more strategies for parenting your teenager every Thursday. We'll see you then. Goodbye for now.
Bye.